self-confidence, self-worth, and self-esteem, all of them fall under a certain category. And in order to get this category of the self healthy, we have to understand ego protection. This is something that narcissists do well and empaths tend to struggle with. Ego protection. I was recently working with a client who had made a decision to be a single mother, and now her children are at the age where they're asking questions. They're right in that toddler age, and so they're asking about where dad is, and she was expressing herself, talking about her regret in her decision to be a single mom. And she said, I hate that I did this to my children. It was wrong of me. I can see that my children are sad. I know what it's like to grow up with just one parent. I don't know what to tell them about their father. I knew that the father would not be in the picture, and now I regret doing it. It was the worst thing you can possibly do to a child, she says, to bring them into this world without having both parents. I knew what it was like growing up like that. I knew it was wrong. That's why I took so long making my decision. This is a sin for me to have brought them into the world this way. I can tell that they're feeling sad about it, but they feel like they're lacking. I don't know how to address this with them. I don't know how to answer their question when they come to me asking about their father. And as you can tell probably by her words, but of course you're not hearing her voice, she was upset. This was something that was distressing to her. And so I said this, and just this. I said, rephrase your story in a way that protects your ego. And she said, well, I didn't make a mistake. It was deliberate. It was a deliberate decision that I made, and it wasn't haphazard. I spent years agonizing over this decision, over this choice. I planned for it meticulously. I prayed for it. And I'm a very spiritual person. I made sure that I did not move forward on this until I felt I had God's approval on this decision. So I didn't do it with reckless abandon for their well-being. I actually cared very much about their well-being, and I agonized about their well-being even before they were born. I wanted to make sure that they had the best chance of having a good life, and that's why I said no to multiple men who made themselves available, who were willing to be fathers to these children. I said no to them because I felt that they were not emotionally mature. I felt that they were narcissistic. I felt that they would be abusive. And I felt that one parent that's healthy is better than having two, but one of them is abusive. And I don't know if that's right or not, but I do know I'm a good mom and I love them. And I've always done my very best for them. And I've always given them the best I could give them. And they have a good life. And no family's perfect. And she said, thank you. After she finished saying all that, she said, now I know how to answer the question. So what was the exercise that we did there? Remember, I just gave one simple prompt. I said, just retell the same story, only tell it in a way that protects your ego. Your ego is your inner sense of self, right? The ego is not something for you to push aside and say, this is unimportant. It's not something for you to view as an evil part of the self. Like for me to care about myself at all, that's bad, that's evil. No, 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 no. You need a healthy ego. You need a healthy ego. It is not anti-Christian to care about yourself, your well-being. Wasn't it Jesus that prayed, Father, glorify me alongside you, right? So having an ego, protecting an ego is not anti-spiritual. It is not lacking humility. Humility is the opposite of haughtiness. Haughtiness is having disdain for other people. There's nothing about having an ego that means that you have to have disdain for other people. Having a healthy ego is the cure to being a toxic empath. It is the cure to CPTSD. Having a healthy ego, knowing how to protect your ego is the cure to borderline personality disorder. So we need to know how to protect the ego, how to have a healthy ego, how to make it robust, right? And so just that simple prompt, when I had my client retell your story in a way that protects your ego, all of a sudden the emotional dysregulation was regulated, and she even knew how to proceed on something that's a difficult question for any of us. It's the same for you. It's just as simple as switching your prompt. You may have gotten the impression from the way that you were raised that you're not supposed to be trying to protect your ego, but you're supposed to be trying to protect other people's egos. And so you're good at building other people up. You're good at telling other people the things that they want to hear, even though there's sometimes lies. And that's what makes you a people pleaser, right? A person who will misconstrue reality in order to make sure someone else is feeling satiated. That's a people pleaser. In other words, they're a liar, right? So they're a manipulator, they're a gaslighter. That's what you are. If you're a people pleaser, you gaslight people, but it's not evil. It's just that you're scared. You're scared to give them the truth. You're scared to give them reality. And so you spend your time being hyper vigilant of other people's actions and reactions and their movements. And you may have done all this because you grew up with a caregiver or a parent or two caregivers and parents that were just unsafe. They were unstable. They were unpredictable. Maybe they're abusive, neglectful. Maybe you had to really work for the love. Maybe you really had to go above and beyond just to get a little bit of validation from your parents. And you needed that as a kid. And as a result, you've developed into this people pleasing, high achieving, hyper vigilant, very anxious adult. And so, where's your self worth? Self what? You have no self. Where's your self esteem? Self what? Where's your self confidence? It's gone. There is none. Why? Because you spent no time building and protecting your ego. The ego and the empathy are two things we need. When we split from our trauma as children and we became empaths, we dropped the ego. We said, well, if I want to survive here, I'm going to have to be a little less selfish and a little bit more about pleasing and managing everyone else's emotions and sense of self. As a result of growing up as a person who dropped the ego, you lose that sense of self, that sense of protection over yourself. That was your mode of operation. That's the way that you survived. And so you don't have to be upset with yourself or judge yourself for that. That's what you had to do. But you do need to change because we don't live at our parents' house anymore. At least I don't advise you to if they were abusive. Now we're out here and we're trying to make it as adults, so we can't keep showing up with no ego. It's not going to work. Or a fragile, very weak ego, right? An ego needs to be strong. How do we do that? How do we build the ego? Well, if you have a lot of negative thoughts and negative thinking, then you have like a little flimsy ego that just kind of like blows in the wind very easily. It can get ripped, it can get torn, and it can just blow away as soon as anyone challenges it, right? Instead, we need like something hard, solid. We need that solid ego, right? Where whatever bumps into it realizes it's going to get an equal force coming right back at them. How do you create a solid ego? Well, this is all in the way that we process the stories. So what's the story you're telling yourself? What's the story you tell yourself about the abuse that you experienced? You tell yourself that that's what you deserved, or that that's what you were worth, or that dictates your worth, that the way you're treated dictates your worth, because all that creates the flimsy ego, flaccid, weak. How do you process the stories, things that you've done wrong? How do you process them? Do you look at the things that you did wrong as another indication that you're not worthy, that you're not worth it? If we hinge our self-worth on something flimsy, then we won't be able to build a strong ego around it. But if we hinge our self-worth on something solid, then we can finally build a strong ego. Like imagine if there was going to be a windstorm outside your house and you had an expensive piece of lawn furniture, something very precious, and you don't want it to blow away. You cannot get it into your house because it's too big. And what is your next thing that you can do to keep your piece of lawn furniture blowing away? How do we keep a piece of lawn furniture from blowing away? We got to get out there and we got to anchor it down, right, to something solid, right? Or we got to put something really heavy on top of it, try to keep it from blowing away, right? So the same way that your lawn furniture is about to go through a windstorm, getting up, putting on your socks and going outside, you are putting your ego through a windstorm. And so you need to anchor it down to something solid. You need to weigh it down to something heavy. So what should we weigh our worth to? Let's see, should we anchor our worth to how other people treat us? Is that a good thing to anchor our worth to? What do you think? No, that makes no sense because how people treat us is more dependent on really who they are. And it also can change from day to day, week to week. That wouldn't be a solid thing to anchor our worth to. Okay, hold on. What could we anchor our worth to? I know we can anchor our worth to our achievements, to what we get done in life. Does that sound like a good solid thing to anchor our worth to? No, not good. Because maybe every moment we don't have an achievement, and maybe we had an achievement, but we forget to keep thinking about it over and over again. How can we always be thinking about our achievements? And also, by the way, some people achieve more than others. Some of our achievements are more tangible than others. Like, how do I, what if I'm a good homemaker? There's no clear achievement until my children are grown. So how do I show that we can't anchor worth to achievement? Also, if we live like that, you live in that hamster wheel of always trying to achieve, so that you can prove your worth. And then you run yourself ragged and you create an expectation, and then everyone expects you to keep achieving. But then you feel like you can't live up to the expectation because now you have perfectionism, and then that makes you a procrastinator. And then you don't want to get out of bed. It's basically so there's no getting out of bed or putting your socks on, all because of what? You anchored your worth to something that was flimsy. So what are we supposed to be anchoring our worth to? Where does our worth even come from? Where does your worth come from? I'm going to leave you to answer that question. We got some advanced people in here who are going to have the answer to that question. Where does our worth come from? What do we anchor our self-worth to? I will wait for the comment to come into the chat. We'll pull up the chat here. God, being born. These are correct. Being alive, correct. Here's the answer. You are born with your worth. You're born with your worth. It's assigned to you at birth. Let me give you a second. Correct, Charlotte. It's intrinsic. Let me give you a second to process this. You are assigned your worth at birth. It is intrinsic. Do you know what that means? That means it cannot be removed from you. It is intrinsic. You are assigned your worth at birth. It is intrinsic. It cannot be removed from you. Do you understand? Every human gets born with the worth of a 4 out of 4. Does that make sense? Every human gets born with a 4 out of 4 in worth. It's innate, correct. You were born with it. It's intrinsic. You understand? So now, you're assigned a 4 out of 4. You have the highest worth a human could have. When do you have it? You have it when you're a baby. right? You have it for how long? For the rest of your life. Okay, so what about when you're being mistreated? Then what is your worth? On a scale of 0 to 4, while you're being mistreated, what is your worth? Same, correct. Still worthy, correct. 4 out of 4, correct. Make sense? When you're achieving and you achieve something amazing, what is your worth? Same, 4 out of 4, good. When you don't achieve anything and you're in the bed lazy and you've been in the bed for 2 weeks and you've been mostly watching Netflix and eating ice cream and you're gaining weight, right? And you've been ignoring phone calls, what is your worth then? Still a 4 out of 4. It's still the same. Your worth doesn't leave you. You still maintain what you were born with, what is innate, what is intrinsic. Still have your potential. Now, understanding that makes us aware that we now have something solid to anchor our worth to. So you go out there and you anchor that worth down to your intrinsic value. Oh, I was born with this value. Ah, yes. Now I got it. Now I got it. Now, when someone comes and tries to blow down your worth, it's the narcissist, it's the narcissistic family structure, it's the workplace, it's the injustice, the sexism, the racism, things come, right? And the abuse comes and it tries to blow down your worth. When you get through the storm, when you come out, what's your worth? Still the same. Doesn't change. 4 out of 4, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100, every single day of the week, sleeping or awake. Great. So now that you know where to base your self-worth and your worth never changes, now you know how to anchor your ego down to something. So how should you walk around knowing that you're worth the highest value a human could be worth? You got to walk around with a sense of stability, confidence, bravado. And this is where we are able to start to build the self-confidence. And the self-confidence is something that needs to be built. So when we talk about self-worth, then we're talking about the value of the self, 4 out of 4. When we talk about self-esteem, we're talking about the way we view ourselves. When we talk about self-confidence, we're talking about our belief in ourselves. So when we view ourselves according to the circumstance, self-esteem, it also will be equally flimsy. So we should base and root our self-esteem on the same thing that our self-worth is rooted on, which is that we have intrinsic value that doesn't change no matter what. Of course, you're going to have days when you feel better about yourself than others. That's okay, because some days you really did something really to be feeling good about. And some days you did things to really not feel so great about. But regardless of that feeling, that self-esteem, that view, that can be a little bit changing, your worth never changes. Your value never changes. So always remember that. So you have to tell the story in a way that protects the ego, which is, yes, what I did was wrong, but I'm still 4 out of 4. What I did was wrong, but I haven't lost my value. Making sense? Or if you did something great, it's the same thing. You made people happy, or you fulfilled an assignment or achieved something. Same thing. What I did was great, but I still have the same value as everyone else. 4 out of 4, 10 out of 10. Now we have a stable sense of self-worth and a base where we can keep a good, high self-esteem. Because regardless of what we're doing, what we've accomplished, it all comes back, it all leans back on that intrinsic value. So how can we have self-confidence? Well, we have to constantly remind ourselves of everything that's great about ourselves. That's self-confidence. Self-confidence is a feeling, yes, but it's a belief, and belief is based on evidence. At least it should be. And so far, you've been going through life with some beliefs that aren't based on evidence, just something you heard or learned or came to when you were a child. Maybe there was evidence of it as a child. But now we need to review that evidence and come to a new conclusion. So analyze. How do I feel about myself? If you're in a room full of your peers and you're telling yourself, I'm less than, I'm not as good as them, I don't have ability, I don't have accomplishments, then you will feel low self-confidence. If you're in a room full of your peers and you tell yourself, I have ability, I am as worthy as them, I have my own gifts, I have unlimited potential, I have things that I'm proud of, then you'll start to feel a sense of self-confidence. So it's how we focus the mind. It's how we tell the story to ourselves. Is this making sense? Okay, let me test your newly instilled self-worth. What if you do something really bad, like a heinous crime? We'll use murder. So you're in jail because you murdered someone in cold blood. It was in cold blood. It wasn't self-defense. You went out and killed someone. Now you're in jail. Okay, now are you worth less? Someone said it depends. By the law of it being intrinsic, no. Oh, wow, that's tough. Here. No, absolutely not. No, just made bad choices. No, hey, the the Zoom room is beating the TikTok room right now. Absolutely, Zoom is on their money. No, 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 no. These things are what we've done now. Well, the crime that we've committed does not change our worth. The crime that we committed does not change your worth. Your worth is intrinsic, innate. You are born with it. You are born with it. Your worth is intrinsic, innate. So you're telling me wrong. I go out and I commit a heinous crime. I kill someone. I hurt someone. And I still have worth and value. That's exactly the same. How does that work? Because there is nothing you can do as long as you are living to change the God assigned worth that you got in the very beginning. You're born with it. It's intrinsic. You can't change it. Sorry. There is no amount of things you can do. You will always have your unlimited potential. As long as you are alive, there will always be an infinite amount of good that you would be capable of. As long as you are living, you cannot get rid of your worth. So when you focus your mind now on what you've done, you have to now make sure your job is to tell the story in a way that protects your ego. Are you kidding me? I'm supposed to still have an ego after I've committed murder? I don't deserve to have an ego after committing murder. Many psychologists would agree with you, but they are wrong. Having an ego is not about whether you deserve to have it. Having an ego is essential for mental health. And you need your mental health even when you're in prison for murder. It is not licensed to lose your mind because you committed a crime. And so what is the story you're telling yourself? If you're saying to yourself, I'm unworthy for what I've done, I'm less than a human for what I've done, I don't deserve to live, I'm a mistake, I'm inherently flawed, I'm defective. All you're doing is taking your sin and putting more sin on top of it. We have to be careful that in the process of trying to be righteous and godly, we don't push God off of his throne and say, oh, I'll be the judge. Because that's what you're doing with all the, oh, I'm unworthy. Now you're going against your birth assigned worth. I'm less than other humans. That's contradicting the natural law that you are worth as much as any human. Saying that you're a mistake, you're inherently flawed and defective. Who are you? Who are you? Yes, we're inherently imperfect. That's true. That's true. But you don't get to assign yourself less worth than what you have. You don't have the right. You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the wisdom, that you just don't have enough to be able to change your worth. I'm sorry. So you have to tell yourself the story to process it properly. What I did was wrong. Guilt is acceptable here. Guilt is an acceptable emotion. Shame, toxic shame, is not helpful or acceptable. What I did was wrong. That's guilt. I am wrong. That's toxic shame. So let's process this correctly. What I did was wrong. What I did was not worthy. What I did was not worthy of representing me. That's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. What I did was flawed. I am, of course, imperfect. I feel remorse for my actions. I take responsibility for what I've done wrong. I was definitely wrong for what I did. It violated my law. It violated my beliefs. It violated the law of the land. It doesn't change the fact. Oh, and by the way, I'll never repeat this error. I've learned and I won't repeat this error. But that doesn't change the fact that I have inherent value, worth, potential, and lovability. So we can be sad without being depressed. And that's how we keep ourselves balanced. So if we can do this now in this exercise with the worst of crimes, you can do this with your mistakes that you've made. We stay out of the extremes by making sure to frame everything in a way that protects the ego. So look back on your mistakes and remind yourself, it was not good. It was wrong, but I did what I wanted to do at the time. I take responsibility. Does it change my worth? No, it doesn't change my worth. Some of us have made some really bad mistakes or done some things that we feel are really bad. But all of the lashing and the beating yourself up for it, it just sets you up for further abuse in this world. That's just the social law of how it works. Someone who comes in with low self-worth, who's very self-punishing, they get targeted to get more punishment. And someone who protects their ego and despises shame, they don't get as much punishment. They don't get victimized as much. They don't get targeted as much. So what I'm giving you, by showing you how to become confident, how to protect your ego, can literally save your life. It can save you from being targeted in an attack. And even if you are attacked, it will save you from allowing that attack to mentally traumatize you for life. So please take to heart this information, use it in your life, and protect your ego so that you have better self-worth, self-esteem, and self-confidence.